So yeah, thank you very much for this short introduction. And I'm happy to be here and to be able to show you something that has not been organized in the way that I would like it to be in the final version, of course. So that's really the first step, I would say, because now it is a little bit sprawling. But thanks to, of course, Kappa's active members, by the way, well, there has been an opportunity to systematize it a little bit. Though naturally there is a lot of work to be done still, and really maybe the extension will be also, or expansion in the material is also required. So in the first slide, I intentionally put some photos of my own city, and the one on the right, this is our central square, which was destroyed just a week after the war started, with the administrative building of the regional council. And on the left, well, also intentionally, I put the picture of my house and what was brought at night. Well, you can see on the left. So there is even no tragic tile already, but there was a part of it just in the road. It was taken out, and within several hours, you can see the picture on the right. So the asphalt was already there. And it was in April. So this is just to show how much of the solidarity and of the union was among those people who were at that time experiencing more than 200 missiles a day. So it was just continuous. And still they managed to cover and to do as much as possible, even more. It seems to me that it was just unbelievable. And on the left, these are photos from Solidar. So this is something which is already, well, recent. And this is before and after. Yes, the title says, so we are going to speak about the pre-apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic and what is between, yeah, and the relativity of what can be considered pre- and post-apocalypse. In representation, of course, in newspaper texts. And let's find out what we understand, first of all, as the apocalypse, yeah? So here on this slide, a little bit of my general understanding of the apocalypse, which was in line with these two quotations. So I do not believe that this is purely either secular or only religious, but basically an apocalypse in our Christian or Judeo-Christian world will be considered mainly secular, will be religious, but secular elements are already there. So we can consider all the catastrophic events, those that will be eschatological events, the ones that can be considered to be apocalyptic. Yeah? And what about the Ukrainian war as it is? It's not really something which is extraordinary or it is out of this world. It is in line with those events which have been happening throughout history. And it was unexpected for us. It was unexpected for many Europeans, and we will see even the quotations in the texts. However, it is in line with the history if we take it globally. Yeah, so we could and we should have expected it to happen and should have been prepared probably better than we were. Well, but even here you can see that Ukrainian war, when we see the critical infrastructure, and the text will tell you about the critical infrastructure being destroyed, it's not extraordinary because usually the strikes are against the administrative facilities, the industrial facilities, and the critical infrastructure, including civilian infrastructure, of course. A bit of the Russian perspective, yeah? So from the point of view of the Russian history and culture and, all these process, yeah, the life process, this is the struggle for its own identity as well. And Russia as the country has not put up with the fact that Ukraine could be something separate and something different from itself. And just 2 days before the Russian invasion, it was, by the way, quoted in Times. Putin said that Ukraine does not have the right for its independence as the country. That is why the quotations which are given here on the left, on the right, seem to be quite logical. So Putin has come to see the defeat in Ukraine as an existential threat. So this is something that not only he didn't expect, but this is something that he cannot put up with now, definitely. And he cannot stop because it will be against all the principles and ideas. Looking behind, I love that metaphor very much when last year, also in The Guardian, the Russian Federation and its movement was described as going forward with the head turning back. So this is the country which looks constantly back and not forward. And moving forward is always related to something which was in the past and not clearly outlining the strategy for the future and for real development or evolution, if you want. And both Ukrainian and British newspapers describe the Russian position similarly. Yeah, I translated the Ukrainian version so that it is clear. Yeah, so the grand clash of civilizations with the West. Okay, and a similar idea expressed in the Times. Why newspaper texts were selected? Well, first of all, because media are very important now, and they are even more important than, say, one of the channels. For example, books or television or the internet, generally speaking, yeah, because it has so much information that something should be taken out of this extreme flow, yeah. But what is important about newspaper texts, that they are media in terms of combining different channels in the way that they represent their material. What I mean? So if we take the text, which was written by the author, so this is the main text, but it always has related articles which can be either embedded in the text or they can be given after reading the article, and that is also interesting how newspapers give this information. What we have found out now already is that only the Times, for example, gives the related articles after reading. So if the person is really interested, and there is a certain kind of respect to the reader. So the text is read in full, then if you are interested, you will continue reading other texts. In The Guardian and Suspilne, or the related articles will be embedded into the text. So the text will be interrupted with those inclusions related somehow. Yeah? Also, audio-visual material. So they can be podcasts, they can be videos, they can be just photos, of course, representing and illustrating those events which are happening. Yeah? They give more information and more dimensions to the picture. We will see that they also give the right to say more, yeah, with the help of these materials. And related articles and the voices inside the texts give us an opportunity to consider intertextuality and intermediality. And that was in line with what Patricia said not so long ago about Baitin's idea, which I loved, and I wanted to make that arch to what you saw in your work. I selected only those articles which were not monophonic, but they were polyphonic. So they were written by journalists, including some voices from either victims or witnesses or officials, so other positions, other people with a direct speech or reported speech or video materials, whatever, but some other voices were present. Yeah? And as a result, altogether, we will have, of course, the understanding or more deeper understanding of the text. Yeah? So the selection criteria were, yeah? Ukrainian British newspapers, we can see that there are different target audience, the Times and the Guardian different audience, and approximately, not the same, but similar audiences in Ukraine. Genre, so analytics and reports with minimum 2 voices, the period October 2022 and December 22 and January 23. Because they were milestones periods and there was quite a lot to speak about at that time. The scope, so far the scope is about 20,000 words per periodical. So there are 4 periodicals, so approximately 80,000 words. So the newspapers were the following, and of course I took their media online, media versions, because they're available, because you can subscribe to them, and there is no need now, and nobody does subscribe or buy the paper versions. The methods in use. As I'm interested and I have been working in linguistics and culture, we have in the Slavic tradition lingua culturology, which unites actually language in or embedded in the culture, so through the prism of the culture. And the method of linguo-cultural analysis, if you want, it will involve the linguistic analysis of the text itself, text decoding, which is related definitely to semiotics. Media discourse analysis, because we are speaking about media texts. Motive analysis, because we are speaking about semantic elements embedded in the text and present in many texts. And intertextual analysis, because we are speaking about the relations between different texts. Aspects considered. So I looked at what happened time-wise. That is why we are speaking about pre-apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic events. They can be viewed retrospectively, prospectively, and also the position is very important. So what is our moment of speech and how we perceive the situation where we are. Culture and context-wise, of course, we are here looking at what is extra-linguistic, so social, political, military, cultural, all these historic context. And of course, the addresser and addressee and their preparedness and their cultural background to perceive the text. So the three phases, which I have already mentioned, of the apocalypse, actually apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic. Within all the texts, there is a number of motifs and images, symbolic images, that are typical of the apocalyptic narrative and apocalyptic discourse. However, here I will speak only about war, hero and anti-hero, or friend or foe, as you wish, and hope, and just related elements or their connections. This is all. As we have already said that there are intertextual relations, of course, texts are intensified, and the layers are added with the intertextual elements. Even our mayor in Kiev, who is not supposed to be the brightest and the best educated person ever, however, a very successful, of course, athlete, and after that, a politician. Even he used intertextuality in his speech. But you can see it is very easy, because if you read it, even the translation into English, there may be an apocalyptic similar to Hollywood movies. This is something that he predicted in December last year. Because even if you say Hollywood, it is already an illusion, and then all the texts, I mean all the movies and all these multimedia texts will be behind. A lot of other examples are given in many other texts, by the way, more in Ukrainian than in the British ones. However, we will see how they are not distributed. There is no quantitative distribution, but the repertoire is interesting. So what are other references? The editorial headline, yeah. So this is something that will mean something to the newspaper, and they will put it, pay attention to it and draw attention of the recipients. Yeah, if we say apocalypse now, then we think about minimum two texts, 2 movies, and maybe even more. Yeah, everything that stood behind. Zelensky, in his speech in Congress, mentioned Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and more. Saratoga, so that was something that he mentioned to draw attention. And Saratoga was not mentioned in the newspaper text. However, the first 2 allusions were there. These allusions are also called precedent phenomena, precedent here events, yeah, precedents, because they happened in history, and after that we allude to them either directly or maybe only indirectly. There was also the comparison, which has been quite frequent, of Zelensky and Winston Churchill, regarding his speeches and visits and so on, and that was also mentioned in the Ukrainian newspaper. In the 4th example, the precedent name of Cold War is interesting in terms of the graphics, because here it is given not capitalized, but it is given with just small letters, and it means that there are 2 meanings, direct and figurative, naturally. And as you can see here, it was actually meant to be so. The Cold War, which was again started or launched, as you wish, so far, called by Putin, plus people who were left without heating, electricity, and water supply were doomed to freeze. The ideal storm, also, it was in the title of the article. One more precedent name, and again, it is apocalyptic. David and Goliath, also the idea of the war, of the battle. So again, we are generally speaking about the apocalyptic event and the victory in this event. The day after tomorrow, by the way, here's the day after tomorrow, also in the title of one of the newspapers. Newspaper articles, it was given not only to speak about the apocalyptic event itself, but post-apocalyptic development. What will we do the day after tomorrow, meaning after the victory? Because the title here, if we translate it, it will say how Ukraine will recover, how it will rebuild itself. Precedent names which were used in The Guardian and The Times. I give this precedent name and this quotation because it is interesting that The Guardian wrote about cabling on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean not a couple of days ago, but you see it was on October the 1st. And there was nothing extraordinary in that danger, in the threat that the West now sees in its critical infrastructure, meaning the cabling, the internet cabling, which is not in the clouds, but it is actually on the bottom of the ocean. And this cabling is not secured well enough to be safe. Yeah, and the article deals with that in a lot of details. British newspapers provide a lot of details about comparing of what is happening now and what arches and what parallels can be drawn to the Second World War. That is why you can see, not in relation to the Ukrainians, but in relation to the Russians, unfortunately. Sorry. Nothing personal. Because, yeah, I feel embarrassed a little bit, but that's the text and I cannot change it. But the situation is really so that there is a lot of comparison with Nazi, with those events which happened, with other figures that were active at that time, with the tribunal which was after that, with the neo-Nazi movement which is active now in Europe, by the way, and the methods that the Russian imperial, so the new movements, are what steps they are taking to to nurture and to encourage the activities of neo-Nazis in Europe. Then, of course, other events are mentioned naturally, and we remember, and for the American people, of course, it is quite evident that we are speaking about Cuban Missile Crisis, and when we are speaking about Armageddon, which will be also mentioned directly, this is something that Americans are already, and not only Americans, are prepared for, yeah? And that is why this is also an arch to bunkerization, because there has been a lot of fear behind it, in fact, yeah? So living in generation after generation in the fear of the potential nuclear war makes you, on the one hand, numb, on the other hand, really scared of the potentiality of what can happen. Those figures like Prigozhin, for example, the Wagner boss, is reminiscent of Stalin's motto, not a step back. And I remember from my childhood and being in the pioneer camp that indeed this motto was even after that, after the war. So not a step. Does anybody know what it means? Not a step back. No? Yes, you know. No? Yes. Yeah. Okay. But it meant that people could be actually shot in their back if they went back. So after that, in the summer camps, we had the motto which was the same. It was just the modification of the same one. So there was not a step behind, not a step just on the same place, but you should move only forward. So we were taught and prepared to do the same. Even, well, that was the end, and that was nearly the collapse of the Soviet Union time. Yeah. And again, the associations with the final battle, which is the apocalyptic event by itself. Yeah, the final battle, and the association and the precedent name of the Game of Thrones, but here only metaphorically, yeah, that it is not like in a movie, but it is real, and this is about the final battle. Wagner and Mozart, that's interesting what is behind it. These are not just names of the composers and not just names of the organizations, but it is interesting that the names of the organizations were given to the terrorist, yeah, of course, Wagner as a terrorist organization, so to say. But Mozart is the organization which is considered to be humanitarian, which provides training to Ukrainians, not only military, but also civilians, formed by former Marine Corps officers. But both composers were somehow related to the apocalypse and to millenarism. Because not only Wagner was the favorite composer of Hitler, but also Mozart was fond of, in his Magic Flute, for example, he was fond of the Illuminati idea. So that is also, well, reminiscent, but still it is related to the apocalyptic events. The Times gave twice last year this quotation by Dmitry Medvedev, Horsemen of the Apocalypse, are on their way, first in June and then at the end of the year. Which is again, so this is the movement that they cannot stop. Pre-apocalyptic phase itself. Yeah. So the main ideas, yeah, and the feelings which are related to this phase are given here. Yeah, war and anxiety, expectation, insecurity, preparation for it, by the way. Yeah, that is why in one of the books on the apocalypse here, we can read that there are these preppers, yeah, so those people who are actually, yeah, live in this expectation, uncertainty and threat. And what we are speaking about, the pre-apocalyptic expectations are related to energy. The apocalyptic scenario, it is in inverted commas, but it is given directly. Or we are speaking, again, in energy, we are speaking about the collapse, or the massive critical failure, or we are speaking about total blackout. So we are speaking something which will lead to the catastrophe for many people. Though it can be just a catastrophe and not, of course, the apocalypse itself, because it will not kill the mankind. It will just kill those people who are here in this territory, and this is all. And nuclear weapons, of course, and after Joseph Biden said this word at the beginning of October in his speech, of course, it was multiplied in all the media, and all the resources that I analyzed here, of course, they used this word as well. What the Russian Federation is trying to do was described as intimidatory, yeah? And demoralizing, and again intimidating. So this word is quite popular in terms of describing the activities that are done. Addressing the audience in the UK and the US, other topics are taken into consideration. Again, yeah, internet cabling, radioactive threats, yeah, and the radioactive tsunami, for example, and the floods. So being on the island, we know that, that there are strong apocalyptic thoughts on the British Isles, and there is a lot of fiction, non-fiction literature, and there are a lot of expectations of something similar to this. And, well, and the cyber attacks, of course, yeah. Though we know that some of them failed, but others were successful. And looking retrospectively at what is now looking already from the apocalyptic stage into the pre-apocalyptic stage, yeah. Well, Boris Johnson, for example, in his interview to CNN, and then it was published by NV, so this is the Ukrainian newspaper. He said that, well, you can say it from the quotations, yeah, that the French didn't believe in the Russian invasions, while the Germans wanted Ukraine to surrender, and what happened was a big shock. Xi Jinping also didn't know anything, as it was also quoted by this newspaper, referring to the Financial Times. Well, here, catastrophe viewed retrospectively, again, but we are speaking here about, well, the Times view only. And even the language itself shows that there is a high level of these expectations. For instance, if we are speaking about the text itself, that is after the Biden speech. So he said that in his, the text says that in his starkest assessment yet, so this is already the highest degree, yeah, the superlatives, or the closest, the closest, we come closest to the nuclear threat, yeah, and to that crisis. Again, the superlative degree. The perfect aspect is used. So both grammatical and lexical means are used here. Apocalyptic phase. So here we are speaking about the actions that are taken by the people. So either they become numb or they become, as we understand, yeah, so the first reaction, either to fight or to, or to fire, or maybe to run away. So people actually flee, or they start to fight, and it is described during this phase. Even the pictures show that there is some ambiguity in what is happening. On the one hand, we can see the destruction. On the other hand, even the picture shows the light, which can be considered to be okay. So this is the final light, and there is only death after that, but they can be also the new beginning. Yeah, and what was said by the Ukrainians here, that to stop means to die for Ukraine. Yeah, and as long as there is Russia, then there will be a threat to Ukraine as the country, as is. What is seen from the people's perspective, there is a lot of information given from the respondents. The second voice or the third voice, which is given in the articles, it is, of course, given by those people who have been witnessing or have been suffering from the war. So they say, first of all, that there is no understanding of what will happen in the future at all. You never know whether you will wake up, and you never know whether there will be actually tomorrow. Even the apocalypse as is, as you can see, zombie apocalypse is used here. That was just the third day, and we remember now that Mariupol is the city with no houses that were not damaged. Yeah, but even after 3 days of the war, there was already such an impression that the city was from a zombie apocalypse. Of course, the decisions are made at this time, yeah, during the apocalypse, while people are living through. There are some decisions made for the future, and that is why they say that there is a lot of symbolism in going first to the hottest point in Ukraine and then to Washington, in order to discuss and to be able to make some decisions for the future. And also the word victory is given directly and given explicitly, so we can speak about the victory for Ukrainians, which is very important in order to feel that faith and hope and to be heroes. Otherwise, there will be no motivation to struggle. What was done by the Ukrainians officials, by the way, which were also taken as respondents, as second voices. The emergency services are working. The shelters, kind of shelters, they are called invincibility points. They are created. People say how they lived through when they were fleeing their city, but they just were stopped and they couldn't go anywhere else because they were already on the front line. So they got stuck for 3 weeks, and they said that these were the longest 3 weeks in their lives, and there was nothing to eat, nothing to get heated with, and so on. Well, some more details here, and also in the times, for example, you can see clearly apocalyptic allusions, rivers of blood, medieval slaughter. So well, closer or farther from the original text, but we are coming to the apocalyptics in the newspaper text. Well, two parties, yeah? We are speaking about Russians and Ukrainians, of course, yeah? So from the Russian position, we can see that the Russian approach was described as the act of vengeance, and there are those forces who are really militaristic and who called for a tougher and more ruthless offensive approach. And the Ukrainians had nothing else to do but to hold on and to keep moving. Yeah. And that is why the stalemate, I gave it also as the, well, and what is in the medium as a result. It was on the edge of the years. It was early June this year that the headline of the article in the Times said that it was a war where all the roads towards peace are blocked. So at that time, the situation was stalemate in all the respects. And sometimes the British papers say something that the Ukrainians cannot say, because it will, again, of course, damage the motivation and the willingness to fight. Because they can say that there are some women, for example, like here, respondent, who is 71 and who has been living in Bakhmut, and who said that she doesn't care. She doesn't care who controls, as a result, this place, because she has already suffered so much that the Russians, so as it was intended by the Russians to break the will and to break the determination, so it was actually done to those people who were weaker. Yeah? That is why it is important for the Ukrainian newspapers not to give such information, because otherwise it will spread in no time. Yep. People spoke about the changes, drastic changes that happened in comparison with the pre-apocalyptic time and to the apocalyptic period. So people's eyes changed. They became empty. So there was a kind of abyss. So there was nothing, and numbness, and the propaganda worked. And different situations. When people were civilians, they were laymen, and they became volunteers, and they became soldiers. So they lived in different situations, and they were still, already during the apocalypse, they were preparing for the worst. So on the one hand, they already speak about it, and they are described during the apocalyptic phase. And we can actually speak about their pre-apocalyptic and apocalyptic phase, but they are still waiting for the apocalypse to come. So it moves again in time. Yeah? More drastic changes that are also stated here, but I will not stop here for a long time because that will be too long for us. Post-apocalyptic phase. Of course, here we are speaking about the ideas which were more verbalized in the Ukrainian newspapers, because it is also evident that it is necessary to speak and to have an image, at least an outline of what will be after the war. Yeah. Also, that will help to increase the motivation. Yeah. That is what we can see there: the end of war, after war, next, chaos, belief in future, or to cope with the war. And of course, what would people say? That the war will end sooner or later. Yeah, that is in the Ukrainian paper. The Times says, yeah, we will be here. Yeah, they are describing the Ukrainians, but they say that the Ukrainians will be there, will be standing on their positions till they are victorious, and they provide this information. After the war. So the headlines and the headlines supported by the bodies, they provide those outlines, that those possible ways of going into tomorrow after the end of the war. Yeah, and different ideas are given, different problems are voiced. For example, demographic problems, because millions of people have left the country, millions of people probably we do not know how many, but hundreds of thousands of people, 100% will die, because now there are even more than 100,000 for sure. And we do not know how many people will come back to Ukraine and will not suffer from PTSD and other problems. Everything has been reevaluated or reassessed as you wish. Yeah, so the values have changed. People who have come back to their homes, to their hometowns, they see the situation after living through as survivors. They see the situation differently. They do not look back at petty things. They value those things that they had. They value those things that they have today, and they try to build tomorrow. What was wonderful in the phrase given in Ukrainian here by NY editorial, this is like a motto which they give every day in their editorial articles. So they say, remember what was brought yesterday, live today, and believe in the future, yours and that of the country. So this is something that is a motto for inspiring people and, of course, encouraging them to move on. Something that you will not see in the British newspapers, because it is almost impossible to see this neology, to see the vocabulary development. And moreover, even the Ukrainian texts do not provide a lot of these elements, because they are newspapers and not social media, and they are not, one is the broadsheets, so to say, well, the probably at least the most objective one, if we can put it so. And we will not see their tabloids. That is why the words like "расисты" from fascists, yeah, which was coined at the beginning of the war, "орки," which was coined well after Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, of course, yeah, and "сепари," well, the short for separatists. Well, you can see them in the direct speech. You can see them in the links to video materials, again, to the related materials, but not in the body of the texts. What you can see sometimes is graphically representation of Russia and the Russian Federation from small letter, not capitalized anymore. If you look at all the social media in Ukraine, then you will see that nothing will become capitalized at all in relation to the name of the country, nationality, and figures. But one collocation, which was coined by Zelensky, as the Times says, was even put into its editorial, yeah, energy terrorism, in relation to what is done to the critical infrastructure. Now let's find out if maybe there will be just questions, and I will not touch upon these motives and images. Shall we go on into the questions, or should I give you information on the images? Tell me, because yeah, all right, Okay. So if we we have looked at it more or less diachronically, yeah, at least from relatively, yeah, from the perspective of pre-apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic stages. So what is there conceptually? So the most important things, of course, the war itself, yeah? But what is there in the war? We are speaking about hope, faith, we are speaking about the spirit and determination there, we are speaking about the solidarity of people and their will to survive, yeah? So how war, yeah, what the war is called, yeah, different variants are here. Many of them coincide because, of course, Britain and Ukraine are allies. That is why you cannot expect, and there was no expectation of seeing really different names. Sometimes they are more emotional in Ukrainian. However, they almost coincide. The same refers to the collocations. So there are a lot of collocations. Of course, they are mainly nominative phrases, but there are even those names of the war which can be seen only at the level of the sentence, not just a collocation. In the British material, so these are the variants that I have so far found in relation to the word, yeah, what it is called. Not only the word itself, but also invasion, and you can say aggression with different collocations, and all those variants which can be found here, yeah, with different metaphors, including the games and, those which are quite often used in different resources. The important thing is to describe the war with relation to those people who are the most important figures there, yeah? Heroes and anti-hero. And this is just a link, yeah, from the war to the hero. Well, there is very often a construction which is called in literary studies by philologists and linguists, which is called text in a text. Yeah, so the structure, when we include either one text or there is even actually a link of texts which are quoted or at least they are referred to. Yeah. So there is the analysis of Zelensky's speeches, and it is, here, oh my God, sorry, sorry. Well, everything is switched on, sorry, that is why I cannot stop it. What is interesting about the speeches? So here there is an example of one of them, where, of course, Zelensky speaks about his gratitude and the attitude to the ally, to the main ally, to the United States, being in Congress. And in his speech, as you see, the word battle was mentioned 13 times, and thank you and grateful 18 times. We will come to Zelensky's speeches analysis a bit later, but here in relation to the war, yeah, it is closely connected with the idea of the so-called Russian world. And we used to, well, it's not a new idea. And of course, it is the imperial idea. There are different opinions when it started and what the roots are. However, the interesting thing here is that we do not put it into inverted commas in the Ukrainian texts, but we can refer to it explicitly and implicitly. While the British newspapers give the description of what it is, the Russian world, because for the audience which is in the West, it's not clear what it is about. Yeah, so they give the transliterated version, they give the translation of the Russian world, they give also the variant of the Russian-speaking world, and also the description of what it is like in their understanding to bring this idea closer and to have the insight, so to say, into this attitude from the Russians and why they are doing what they are doing. We remember also that quotation which we cannot refer to any person directly, yeah, because it was not, definitely it was not Stalin. It was long before that, and there are no doubts who actually was the first person who said it, that the death of one person is a tragedy, but the death of millions of people or hundreds, thousands of people is just a statistic. And here I give you, without the translation, just the way that the information on the losses is given every day in the Ukrainian newspapers. You can see that it is really statistics. You can see how much is lost. Machinery and people. And it is not perceived as something which is really tragic. When there are stories, when they are told by journalists, when they are given by with the direct speech of the respondents, yes, it feels like a tragedy. However, when you read this information, it's just statistics. And why there is such a reluctancy to negotiations? Because even since 2014, over the past 9 years, as you can see in the Times, Ukrainians have learned to place little faith in Russian pledges of peace, because there have been so many ceasefires, so many claims, and nobody ever kept their promises. The image of the hero. Yeah, so coming closer already to what was analyzed in Zelensky's speeches, even the title of the article about his speeches says that their number was great. So within 300 days, there was also a similar number of speeches. But even the title in Ukrainian, not in English, of course, has even the sound. So even phonetically, it has some expressiveness. So it has alliteration and assonance, and also rhythm and rhyme. Everything is brought there, so it appeals to the reader from the very beginning. And it is also the text and the text, because the original material was prepared for the Voice of America by their journalist. And the journalist made it together with the head of one of the biggest publishers in Ukraine, who is also an expert in literary studies. And then it was reframed and it was published by NV. The hero image is not only present in newspaper texts, but you can see that it is throughout in the culture. So just several days ago, in Ukraine, our postal service, Ukrposhta, issued a series of stamps, which is called the Warriors of Light, the Warriors of Good. So this idea, of course, is encouraged widely. Yeah, sure. Now the analysis of his speeches. Yeah, what he uses in his speech. Generally speaking, Ukrainian and Russian as languages contain more of nominal parts of speech, not verbs, not verboids, for example, not participles, and we don't have gerund at all. However, what is typical of the English language is the abundance of verbs, especially if we want to show the narration as the active one, of course, the active forms of the verbs. And Zelensky's speeches are full of active forms of the verbs. Yeah, and you can see just here the examples, but it characterizes him as a hero, as an active person in this process. And they are also related, if you look at the meaning, then of course, they are intended for the victory. The comparison is also given of the rhetoric which is used by Zelensky and Putin. It is said that there are no personas in Zelensky's speech, that he uses simple phrases, he doesn't use sophisticated syntax, in comparison with Putin, who uses a lot and who uses different masks, using these discourses, starting with the business discourse and finishing with argot. The Ukrainian officers, not only the president, but also other people are shown as heroes in the war. Yeah? In particular, Suspilne in Ukrainian shows the Ukrainian officers as heroes who are ready to perform, who are very skilled, who are quick to learn, and so on. And also, they draw attention to our history, which also tells us that we have gone through a lot of centuries of the struggle for independence, through a lot of wars, and a lot of tensions, and egos, and so on. The representation of enemy, you can see that there is much more in comparison with the hero. So the hero, of course, is the heroism is encouraged, but there are a lot of names for the representatives of enemy and enemies in both Ukrainian and British newspapers. They are sometimes different, of course, but generally you can see that their number is more or less proportionate. Yeah. What is also interesting, yeah, that they we can speak about different activities that are performed by the Russian Federation. Mainly, they are interesting in terms of showing us not only the collocations that are there, and you can see that there are a lot of, but there is also already the regularity, and there is a certain kind of routine in this, because they say another, one more, a new one, again, a big number, massive. So this is something that tells us that, okay, so this is just one more. This is just another day, another story. And hope. Hope is also important, yeah, to survive, to get the victory, and to attain, actually, that victory. And it is in our human nature to be hopeful, because it will, it commits us to action and it gives us forces. Here I also gave the picture of the place which used to be a very good spa center where I used to go yeah, for the wellness classes and swimming pool. So that's what was done in summer. Yeah. But as an interesting story about hope, why I put it here on this slide. Because it was not only destroyed last summer, but just a week or two ago, representatives of this center called and asked whether we would like to go back and to start going to their swimming pool. Yes, so it was also repaired. Resilience. So resilience is important because it is the important quality which is not only important for the Ukrainians, but for all the people living in danger, and being able to face the challenge and to give the to respond. But you can see here the example of the article again, which is given. This is the headline, and again it was quoted by the Ukrainian periodical. It was quoted from New York Times. Again, text in the text. Yeah, that. Despite all the missile attacks, the Ukrainian economy is adapting somehow by evacuating, by working, adapting in all the way possible. And also again, the respondents' ideas that the fear is there. The fear is pre-apocalyptic, during the apocalypse, even after that possibly, but the stem, the inner feeling of being Ukrainians, of being proud, of being supported inside, internally and externally by other people, this is something that moves people forward. Yeah, and that spirit of freedom, and that's in comparison with what is perceived from the Russians and the Russian culture. And the final quotation here. So nothing has broken our spirit. Yeah, and despite the intimidation, we decided that was a story of those people who came back to Kherson region, probably, or to Kharkiv region, or to the deoccupied areas. So they started working again in their bank outlet, and during the period of the occupation, because this quotation is referred to the period of occupation. There was the day of Vyshyvanka. Vyshyvanka is the embroidered shirt, and in May we celebrate such a festival, so to say, and everybody tries to wear this kind of embroidered shirt. So they decided, even being an occupation, they decided to wear Vyshyvankas, being in the occupation. So that was something that was characterizing them as strong persons. So they just decided, and they did it, yeah. And they were waiting for the liberation by Ukraine. Thank you. And we do hope that it will happen.